Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my live streams. This is the Comics Today show, a show that we have been doing consistently for, I don't know, 60 some odd weeks on Wednesday to celebrate the best day of the week, that being New Comic Book Day. And as part of this show, what we like to do is to have a guest on to help me to also make sense of something that is happening in the world of comics and collectibles. And tonight we have a guest that is going to join us, and we are going to spend some time talking about this idea of a woke mindset potentially leading to and contributing to the demise of not just DC Comics, but potentially comics as a whole. And this has been something that's been out there in the world of comics and collectibles for the last maybe year or so. That's my feeling. And this is something that I wanted to talk about. And I will tell you that it has taken me a healthy amount of time to wrap my mind around the idea that this is something that we can do. But one of the things that I truly believe is that if we don't take the time to have these conversations amongst ourselves in a civil way, then the conversation potentially will not happen and people will not have an improved understanding of other people, which is like part of the challenge, right? And if we all believe in the future of comics and if we all love comics the way that we say that we do, then we should be able to have a civil conversation about this thing that is happening in our worlds, right? So we're going to have a guest on and we're going to talk about that, and then there's a couple of other things that we're going to talk about as well. But before we get to any of that stuff, I do want to give you guys a reminder that this live stream that you might be watching right now is actually going to be rebroadcast on the podcast come next Monday. So I definitely want to encourage you guys to keep your eyes open for that. If you want to take some Reggie on the go and listen to my words while you're out doing a workout or driving to work or something like that, we recently hit 20,000 downloads on the podcast. So I'm definitely very proud of that. And the channel here on YouTube continues to grow, which is also something that I'm very proud of. We have surpassed 16,000 subscribers here on YouTube. And I think we just have added like another 100 or so in the last week or so. So the channel is definitely growing. And hopefully that's just a testament to the quality of content that we are putting out, as well as the quality of the people that surround the channel, that contribute to the channel in terms of their comments, their views, their shares, and all of that other good stuff. So to that point of the community, if you will, that surrounds the channel, we are going to go to the chat here in a moment. And I want to hear what it is that you all may have picked up at your LCS today. Again, because this is a celebration of New Comic Book Day. If you hit the LCS and you picked up some stuff, let me know what you picked up. And if you want to give a shout out to your LCS, we can do that as well. The very first comment that I see here is from my man Mark, that basically says the truck was delayed, no new comics. And he has the tear emoji. He has 3 of them. That is the intensity of his sadness communicated in the form of emojis. So looking over here, my man Vox, how you doing? He said picked up Strange Love Tales. I do not know that comic, but it's some tie-in good. Oh, you can't go wrong with James tie-in. You can't. It's impossible. The guy is a fantastic writer. So it's all about Reggie Smooth. I don't know about that, brother. I don't know about that. Fight the Good Fight says congrats on the milestone. Picked up Avengers 53, Marvel Super Special, and Sabretooth and some other good stuff. That's what's up. Madam Blaster is in the house. How you doing? The almighty Lighter King says he picked up everything, and then he also gave us 3 laughing emojis, which communicates that he indeed probably did spend a significant amount of money at the LCS. So shout out to you, brother. What do we have here? King of Spies, Avengers 53, Life Zero, couple of cool books right there. Not new, but new to him, says Ken. He picked up ASM 344 and 382. That's what's up. Scrolling through the comments here, Clay, how you doing? He picked up some, what is that? Rom, and whatever the new X-Men spinoff is, brother. Yes, Clay, it could be any number of things because there is a spinoff of the spinoff of the spinoff. Terry's giving a shout out to heroes aren't too hard to find here in North Carolina. That's what's up. Scrolling through the comments here. No LCS from Matthew. He says he will hit it on the weekend. Scrolling through eyes. How you doing? No LCS today, but a long time had to get on the show. That's what's up. Well, welcome, brother. Welcome. Scrolling through 2 cents here is saying about $100 today. Yes, you may want to throw up a tier emoji or two, because that's a nice chunk of money. Shout out to your LCS. I'm confident that they appreciated your support. Scrolling through the comments, I will tell you guys, I did not hit the LCS today. You guys know I fired my LCS, but I did manage the other day to pick up a couple of my books. This is Monster Kill Squad. Here is Pirate Queen. Both of those are from Bad Idea. Picked up Miles Morales, Spider-Man issue number 34. Picked up some Icon and Rocket. I think that is issue number 5. And then 2 more books here I'll show you guys. This is Hulk issue number 3. Not crazy about that Wolverine back there, I will tell you that. And then Spider-Man issue number 86. So those are the last set of books that I have picked up for my LCS. I am waiting right now for my shipment from mycomicshop.com. Fingers crossed that that arrives here. A lot of people have been asking me whether I'm concerned about the condition of the books and how they may actually show up. I am not, because if I were, I probably would not have ordered from mycomicshop.com. All right, let me see. Bad Idea was a bad idea for sure. Let me see. I'll scroll. If anybody is here for the first time, if you are here for the first time, let us know that so that we can welcome you properly. Ricardo says saving money for the anniversary. Yes, brother. I do think that is wise. I think that is wise. I don't think that the wife is going to be interested in the fact that you picked up some new books and she didn't get dinner or some kind of important anniversary present or flowers or whatever it is that you're going to do. Cottonmouth is in the house. Finally made it to a live stream. That's what's up. Welcome, brother. Definitely appreciate you making your way here. Again, if there's anybody here for the very first time, let us know that so we can welcome you properly. We are going to dig into a topic here momentarily, and I'm definitely going to ask everyone to be as civil as possible to one another and certainly to our guests, because I feel that we should be able to talk about some of these difficult topics, because I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to understand one another's point of view. I think it's healthy to have conversations, but I think it's important to try to do it as civilly as possible, despite maybe how you might feel, the angst you may feel. Let's seek to understand. All right. So the very first topic that I want to talk about as we wait for our guest to join us, Steve Conge, I am going to address that comment because I saw it before I came in. I think it's a wonderful one, brother. We are going to get to that. And I could not potentially agree more. I only read the first part of it, so I don't want to say the whole thing because people will be like, well, what about these last 4 words that Steve said? I don't want to be on the hook for that, Steve. Okay. So bear with me, brother. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. And I want to do this because I want to talk about a topic that we spoke about many months ago. Several months ago, I did a report, a news report on the fact that some comics have been stolen from a college library, right? And we talked about the fact that these comics have been stolen. They were, reportedly some rare comics, hard to find comics that have been donated by a family. And so we now know who stole the comics. And this guy, I'll be honest with you, they keep using the word allegedly. This dude is cold busted. He is cold busted, and we are going to talk about why that's the case. The security head, the head of security at FSU has been arrested for stealing $100,000 worth of comics. And when you find out, like, this guy, head of security, not bright. Recently, the head of security at Florida State University was arrested for stealing almost 4,000 rare comics estimated at more than $100,000. They were stolen from the library's collection and included books from Marvel, DC, and Disney, right? The usual suspects, right? So this was actually reported in a Tallahassee Democrat. He stole 4,996 comics to be exact. And they say that this actually happened in 2020. They say the police believe he sold many of the missing comics through the last 2 years to private buyers and a comic shop. Mm, If that man, I hope that comic shop did not know. Through a comic shop, and he's been charged with grand theft of more than $100,000, fraud, dealing stolen property, and sale of stolen property on the internet. He was released on bail on Saturday, and they highlight here that the missing comics from the collection include 1,200 titles from the 1950s to the 1970s, including Marvel, DC, Disney, pulp magazines, underground comics, and foreign comics. And I do not know why this specific Avengers book is in there. Maybe they just needed an image, or maybe this is one of the books that was stolen. I honestly don't know. Same thing with that Batman book right there. But here, let me get to this thing. They say police reports haven't specified how the rare comics were stolen, as they had been protected by a chain link fence and a padlock. However, as head of security, this guy had access to one of four keys. Brother, one of four keys. They didn't have to look that far. Following the theft, the suspect, now this dude's guilty, he used online message boards to communicate about selling rare comics that had been among those stolen. They've recovered 2,800 or so of the comics. But let me go into this other part. They highlight here that he posted on various Facebook pages that he wanted to reduce the size of his collection, revealing many of the same titles as those reported missing. It goes on to say that looking at his Google search history, they discovered that he made 448 searches regarding the price value of the stolen comics between April 20 and January 2021. Brother, they got your browser history, okay? And there was another part in here where it appears that he also utilized a company known for grading valuable comics. And this link that you see here doesn't actually go to anywhere other than an article about Hulk One. So I was hoping that it was going to link to one of these sites. I was thinking one of the grading companies. This dude submitted stolen books to a grading company and actually had the stuff graded. This is a crazy story. Again, if there is money involved, there will be bad actors, and the security guard is definitely a bad actor. And I hope he gets whatever he deserves. It is unfortunate that this guy resorted to stealing comics and trying to sell them. I don't even know how you go about recovering all of these comics that were stolen to be able to return them to the schools, library. It's a hot mess. It's a hot mess, but I wanted to cover off on this because, again, it was a topic that we had discussed previously, and I wanted to circle back on it. Let me close this Facebook thing. I'm giving away a rug, and I'm waiting for a guy to come pick the rug up. So I have Facebook open, which is something I never really use. But anyway, all right. So what is that? Let me look at these comments real quick. All right. Yeah, Rich is trying to put him up on game. Rich is trying to educate him. He said he should have just sold them at cons and at shows. In other words, you should have just done it face to face, sir, because trying to do it on the internet was probably not the best idea. But I'm confident that this guy's going to get exactly what he deserves. But it is Florida, so you never know. All right. So with that, we are going to make a hard turn to start talking about the topic at hand. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, we are going to spend some time talking about this idea that the woke mindset is actually leading to the demise potentially of DC Comics and also potentially comics as a whole. And so I like to have conversations with people, right? Like I like to seek to understand people's points of view. And so I put up a series of posts on the Instagram like, hey, this is something that I've been hearing out there, like who can enlighten me on some of this, right? And I had several people reach out that attempted to explain the point of view to me, but they didn't necessarily fully appreciate the point of view. So it wasn't, they were like trying to explain someone else's perspective. And I wanted to talk to someone that actually had this perspective, if you will, and could help me to peel back the layers of the onion to understand it a little more. And so I found a guest that put his hand up. He reached out to me. We spoke for, I think, about 40 minutes or so. Could have been 30. I was having such a good conversation. I was engrossed. It felt like 30. Could have been 40. I don't know. But I had a conversation. And at the end of this conversation, I was like, I would like for you to come on the show so we can spend some more time talking about this. Because again, I think that conversations are important. I think that we as a comic book community should be able to have different points of view. We should be able to discuss those points of view, and we should be able to like walk away from those conversations maybe a little more enlightened as a result of having taken the time to understand someone else's point of view. And so to this point, with that big wind up, I want to welcome to the show my man Max. How you doing, brother?
How's it going, man? Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you. And Max, I'll be honest with you, man. I don't like people that come on the show that have good voices. I
Oh, no.
you not to have a good voice. That way my voice stands out a little bit better. So
You
I
know
don't know
what?
if you'll I don't know if you'll
I
be back. Okay. I don't know if you're coming back.
I can understand that, and I'm sorry. I'm just I'm thankful that you would have me on at least for one time. At least for today.
Yeah, this
So
is your one shot. You better do good because this is it. Okay. So,
you
so
know,
Max, I first want to thank you, brother, for agreeing to come on the show and to have the conversation with me. This is not an easy topic to talk about, but
yeah.
we are going to endeavor to do it. So I wanted to start off with a note of thanks before we got going.
No, of course, man. And I want to echo that sentiment and say thank you as well, because as your chat knows, as your fans know, your viewers, you and I both know, the topic of conversation has become so touchy that even if you are portraying it in a negative or positive fashion, it's something that's so polarizing that people tend to maybe turn their ears off to the topic at hand just because they don't want to indulge in it. So I really appreciate what you're doing here, because I think this stuff is important, and just to kind of have these conversations, bring things to light that maybe others may not have the opportunity to hear. So
Yep.
yeah, man, I greatly appreciate it. And real quick, I can't take credit for the post that you put up. Because you said that I had raised my hand, and the only reason why I did was because an incredible gentleman, Ken, over at Expedition Comics on Instagram, a huge positive influence in the comic book community and family, actually reached out to me, and he said, "Hey, brother, I would love it if you could have a conversation and see what you guys come up with." And here we are. So, Ken, I really want to thank you for putting this thing together, because Reggie's an incredible dude, and I'm just very thankful to be friends with both of you guys talking about this thing. So,
Shout out to Ken then. Shout out to
yeah,
Ken for making that magic happen. So, to the point of people turning off their ears because from whatever side you hear it, people are like, I don't want any part of it. People stop listening. So one of the first things that I wanted to do as a person, and the first thing that I want to do in this conversation, is I wanted to throw out the definition of what woke is. And on
mhm.
the other side of that, I want to get your reaction to the definition that I actually found online. So the definition that I was able to find, woke means to be alert to injustices in society, especially racism. So, Max, MVP, as you hear that definition, what comes to mind for you, right? So, be alert to injustices in society, especially racism.
Um, First thing that comes to my mind: common human dignity. You know, uh, basic human decency to other humans is to be aware of your social surroundings, to be aware of the climate that you're in. For us, we're in the U.S., and so I think it is part of our duty to understand the social issues, the political issues that are going on within our country. I spoke to you briefly. I served as a U.S. Marine for 4 years and recently got out. And a lot of what we were doing, we had to be on alert. We were getting briefs every single week on what is going on with the tactical situation. How are we going to handle this stuff? But with this, when it comes to things like racism or sexism or bigotry, I feel like it's common human decency to be aware of that and to be compassionate and patient and kind towards those things. So in and of itself, with that definition, Reggie, I don't think woke is necessarily was meant to be a corrupt thing that has been kind of perverted at this point in time.
Yep.
And I think
we're going to
yeah,
get into potentially that, maybe that perversion, right, as we work our way through this conversation.
yeah,
But one of the things that I want to highlight is that because of that definition, because of, to your point, woke to some degree is about basic decency,
mhm,
right? Being considerate of other people that are around you. That doesn't sound like a bad thing, right?
mhm,
So when people are anti-woke, I don't know if that's the proper term, but against what has, been defined as woke in the world, um, being against woke, the way that it's being defined by others, doesn't necessarily mean that you are for racism, because that's what a lot of people think, right? If you're
right,
like woke is bad, people are like, well, you're a racist. That's not necessarily true, right?
right. Those who speak against the excuse me woke mindset aren't saying that they're pro racism, and I think, like you said, that is a basic assumption for a lot of people, is that's instantly where their mind goes to. But if we're talking about what woke has become, and I don't know if you want to get into that
Go for it.
right now, I think it has become kind of an angry association of people that are trying to like cancel or shut up anyone who's not in line with a political affiliation or a belief system. Just because you are not like me, I do not want to listen to you.
So you
If you
must be
are
bad.
correct,
Yeah.
right?
So
And so there's that automatic thing. Yeah.
one of the things that was interesting is when I found the definition of woke, anytime you look up a word, they give you a sentence to understand the word.
Hmm.
And the sentence that came with woke was like something to the, and I forgot to write it down, but it was something to the effect of uh be angry and be woke. And I'm like, well, why do you have to be angry
Wait a
to
second.
be aware of injustices? Can't you just be alert to injustices and say, hey, that's
Right.
not right? So why does it automatically go to anger? So
Yeah.
even the way that it was being defined and then used was very interesting in my mind.
That
um
really is so interesting. And yeah, it is, it's upsetting and it's frustrating for those who are trying to spread positivity through a woke mindset.
yep.
Because now it's associated, because like you said, of that definition is saying to be so angry and to also be, it's kind of like it's counterproductive, I feel like.
You
But
don't have to be angry to be aware of injustices. you
absolutely.
you can
Absolutely.
address injustices without being angry. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? I mean, or you could
absolutely.
just be angry, which is like counterproductive in general, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that I want to do is, so oftentimes people are defined by what they are against. And so I want to throw out a couple of things and I want to see if you are against these things. Okay. And it's like you're going to not rapid fire, but like, medium fire. Okay. So
Sounds good.
are you against diversity in comics?
No.
Are you against Black, brown, or Asian people being represented in comics?
No.
Are you against gender diversity in comics?
Not at all.
Are you against sexual orientation diversity in comics?
No.
Okay. So my problem now, of course, is that you're not against any of the things that people would assume that you might be against, right?
Correct.
As
Yeah.
someone that pushes back against this woke mindset, if you will. So the challenge is, how do we reconcile some of that stuff, right? So what is your issue, if you wanted to encapsulate it? with the woke mindset, not the definition, but the woke mindset that has become a
Mhm.
little pervasive, if you're not against diversity really in any shape or form? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, real quick, and just so that um, I don't slur my words or sound like I'm out of turn or anything, I did write a few notes down just so that I could have things kind of organized, so that people know that I'm just not kind of trying to blow stuff out my rear end, but that I've actually taken the time to think about this and say, you know what, let's take a step back and let's like look at this. Let's put words on paper to actually think about this. And so there are three things that I have issues with for me mainly.
Yep.
And of course, this is all subjective. This is just my opinion. Um, but basically, what began and what I started to see when I got out of the Marine Corps is I came back into comic books. I came back into the hobby, and I really started delving into these stories. Um, and for some reason, it just didn't seem like what it was when I was initially reading it before I joined the Marine Corps. It seemed like there were these like pseudo moralistic values and virtue signaling that tended to be pushed upon readers. And the mainstream comic book like professionals turned towards a very like politically biased activism instead of art,
Mm,
instead of creativity. And it became this overemphasis of like gender, race, and sexuality of the characters by deconstructing legacy characters. And then the political and economic and social issues then like shoved down the throats of fans through the stories with no kind of respect or reverence towards these characters. So that really kind of what was the initial push for me to see that I had some concerns and I had some criticisms about the where things were going. And that's where I got to the weaponization of my concerns. I was seeing that because I was having doubts or because I was asking questions about, hey, where did Thor go? Okay, it's Jane Foster. Okay, that could be cool. So is she like Valkyrie? Oh no, she is Thor. So then what's Thor doing? So I just had these basic questions, but by claiming these concerns that I had by addressing them, uh, it then became a thing where, oh, you're now a racist, a sexist, a bigot. And then that's immediately said because it causes that divide. It dehumanizes that person and delegitimizes their argument. So that it becomes like this disingenuous comment and argument because you are no longer a person. You have been dehumanized because you are
you're
these things.
you're a thing now. You're a thing.
Correct.
I know who
Yes.
you are. I'm gonna put you in this box. I've
Mm,
identified you, right? But your
yeah.
issue isn't the fact that there was a female character. It wasn't the fact that there was a strong female character. It was more about um well, tell me specifically what it was about the Thor switchover that was an issue for you.
Yeah, of course. You look at like the Defenders
Mhm.
back in like classic silver, bronze, copper age like Defenders, where it's Hulk, Doctor Strange, Valkyrie, Submariner, and Valkyrie has this beautiful elegance and this strong female presence within the group. She's not a B character in the Defenders. She is a main character there. And she had her own voice. And so what I started to have concerns with was, why are we taking legacy characters like Thor or like Hulk or for DC like Green Lantern or whatnot, and why are we taking them, putting them to the side, deconstructing them in order to raise a platform for a different character who tends to need some sort of agency in a different uniform? So I think you and I had briefly spoken about Falcon. And I know I'm kind of bringing up Marvel characters, but I think it's just because of Marvel Now was the really initial like push into what I was seeing with this
Yep.
back in like the mid 2010s. And yeah, we saw Falcon put on the Captain America uniform, which is totally fine, but it delegitimized Falcon. Then it takes away his agency because let's get a Falcon run. I haven't seen a solo run of Falcon, 25 plus issues with a great creative team. But we have seen, Captain America Falcon with a series, and so I wanted to kind of understand, and my questions started to come up of why are we seeing legacy characters being put to the side in order to put up these other characters who already have mantles of their own, who already have very stable, structural integrity to their character and to their history, been around for decades, but for some reason we can't get their book sold because they don't have this certain uniform on. So that was kind of something that I was wrestling with, and that's when the weaponization of my concerns started to form, because then I was automatically labeled, and then I was pushed to the side, just like some of these characters.
So for those that are just tuning in, I'm sitting down talking with Max that goes by MVP, and we are having a conversation about the woke mindset and what woke is, and how Max is thinking about woke, and his initial impressions of it, and how his thinking has kind of evolved around this idea. And he just ticked off one aspect of this that has been problematic for him in a series of 3 things that we're going to talk about. And I think we're going to get to issue number 2 right now.
So issue number 2 for me was the projection of the creators and their own insecurities and biases towards these characters and storylines. The reason why I say that is because fans now seem to get this backlash of, like you said, put into a box. We know who you are or what you are. You are not a concern anymore. And what that does is it, like I said before, kind of re-emphasizing it, it dehumanizes that person. But the thing that I had issue with was the fans were never the ones creating these comics. So if comic professionals now in the modern era have had an issue with the inclusion and diversity of previous years in comic books, they should take issue with previous creators and the industry previously. However, the fans are going to read what they like, and they like what they enjoy. Reggie, you and I have, which by the way, I forgot to mention, your background might beat mine. I love your comic collection, man. And
thank you, brother.
We have put in all this money and all this time and all this passion into this hobby that we love. And then to have a concern and then to automatically then just be dehumanized for it seems a little disingenuous. And I felt like if anyone should be upset, it should be creators and other creators. Why are we getting upset at fans because they were reading the material and we were enjoying it, but we're now the ones being called, this, that, or the other. So that was, I guess, if that kind of makes sense. There's a great quote by Larry Hama. He had an interview recently, and they put it in the back of one of Marvel's Voices like Legacy books. And he says, in the early 70s, he goes, in my opinion, the comic book industry was pretty damn colorblind. They did not care if you were white, purple, pink, brown, or chartreuse. If you could do the work, you were golden. And so I loved that depiction of creators being golden. Doesn't matter what skin color, what sexuality, what gender, you are golden if you are doing the work of storytelling. And that's what fans love. That's what fans wanted. And so now in my opinion, I feel like the modern creators are saying, well, no, comics weren't good enough back then. They weren't diverse. They weren't inclusive. So now we are telling you what you need to take, like intake and read. And that was my other issue. And that's number 2, I guess.
That's number 2. I will tell you, one of the things that I always loved about fitness, for example, right, was when it came to fitness, no one cared what color you were. No one cared. Either you had a good physique or you didn't. If you had a good physique, you won. If you didn't win. Super simple. There was so much, people were really colorblind in the world of fitness. And I think that that's great. And to some degree or another, I honestly think that a lot of comic book fans are that way. People don't care. At least that's my impression. People don't care. But somehow or another, it has really been brought to the forefront. And and maybe not in a good way. But again, that's part of the reason why we are having this conversation. Again, if you are tuning in late, I'm having a conversation with MVP, and we are talking about the woke mindset. He has just ticked off two things that are ticking him off when it comes to this woke mindset, and we're about to get to the third one right now. And I think what's wonderful is you talked about the weaponization of diversity. You are not
Mm.
against diversity, but it is the weaponization of diversity that allows a person that asks a question to now be defined as a racist when all they're doing is asking a question about a character that they love that has suddenly been taken away from them and replaced by something else. MVP, third point.
So, before I get to that, really quick, I want to echo your sentiment again. You spoke about bodybuilding
Yep.
and in the fitness industry. Same thing with the Marine Corps. When you get to that boot camp and you are all lined up and you all have those shaved heads and you are getting ready to go through the gauntlet and earn your, earn your stripes, earn your rank, whatever it is, earn the title of United States Marine. No one gives a, expletive about
Nope.
what you are, who you are, as long as you got the back of your brother or sister next to you. That's all they want. That's
That's
all
what I
they
was
care
about to
about.
say. You're all
Yeah.
brothers. You're all
Yes.
brothers. No one
Yep.
cares. Let's get
Yeah.
it done. Let's live, let's survive, let's make it to the next day, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's about. So thank you for echoing that, because I think that again, it continues to explain who you are, right? And
Mhm.
you're not a racist, even though you ask questions, and justifiably so, right? So let's be super clear about that. So I think again, your background as a Division 1 football player, as a Marine, all of these things I think are important, because again, when you're playing sports, when no one cares. No
Yeah.
one cares. Did you miss the tackle? Did you score the touchdown or not? Super simple. All right. Third point. We ready for this now?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do it. Sorry, brother. So
It's
yeah,
all good, brother.
third point, super simple. I just think the whole thing is in one word, demeaning. I think to people of color, of different sexualities, of different genders, it's demeaning to put them on a pedestal for financial gain. And I think that is what I see. And of course, like I said at the beginning of the interview, this is subjective, and this is just what I'm seeing. And Chad, if you guys echo that sentiment as well, everyone is allowed to their own opinion, because that's what makes these conversations great.
Yep.
But in my opinion, I see corporations cashing in on political intrigue, on social issues, and they're gaining financial, uh, uh, you know, like they're gaining these finances because of their promotion of these new characters or this new woke ideology. Um, and to me, it's disingenuous and it's demeaning towards the characters, towards the creators, towards people that are on the fringes of society or on the margins of society. If you really want to represent those people, you're not going to do it for financial gain. It's because you actually care.
And
And I,
we may
right,
actually talk about that a little bit later. That I want to kind of maybe end on that note. But I
yeah.
saw a comment here as I looked over. Somebody says this guy has a resume. There is a reason why this guy is on the show. There's a legitimate reason. Like, I can have a civil conversation with this guy. He has credibility. He has two legs to stand on, and I appreciate the point of view. Right. So somebody in the comment section threw out something that I want to get your opinion of.
Yeah.
You spoke about the fact of Falcon throwing off his own mantle and assuming the mantle of Cap. And
Mhm.
potentially that was disingenuous. Potentially that was done for financial gain. Potentially they didn't need to do that. They could have just maybe done some other things. But
Right.
Bucky was also Cap. Do you feel the same way about the Bucky Cap switch as you do the Falcon Cap switch?
That's a great question. I honestly, I think that any type of tokenization of a character, whether it's a gender swap or a race swap or just a person, a swap of a person, it's like putting me in a Wolverine outfit. I don't belong there. I don't fit there. I think what Ed Brubaker did with that story on Bucky and Cap uh, was something that I don't think a lot of other writers could have done, which is subvert, well, not necessarily subvert, but give Bucky that mantle of Cap. And I think the difference is that, Bucky was always the sidekick, but never really had his own,
Mm,
he's always kind of a kid.
mm.
From what I remember reading,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm not an expert on Bucky at all. So then to see him kind of get the mantle of Cap might have been for fans this kind of like, oh, a coming of age story. Um,
Like Robin becoming Batman.
Correct.
That's kind of what I'm hearing.
It
Okay.
was like a progression. He's the sidekick to Cap, and then takes up the mantle or whatever. And Falcon had already established his character as Falcon. You
Mm,
saw the red and the white and the large wingspan flying over the cities, and you're going, "Wow, that's cool." And he didn't need Cap's suit, I
mm,
guess. Um, but that's a great question. I think that's kind of how I would equate it to. But honestly, I tend to dislike any, like, even when I'm trying to think, like, of course the Green Lantern Corps is different because, like, there you can have aliens, you can have different races, you could have different beings. They have a Green Lantern that's a planet. Like, that's so cool.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I love the Green Lantern Corps because you can do all sorts of things with the how many people and things are in that universe. But, like, for your, Silver Surfer should always be Norrin Rad.
Mm,
Wolverine should always be Logan. Superman should always be Clark Kent. If we're talking multiverses and stuff, fine, go crazy. But structural to the continuity of the character and to the fans, I think those people should stay with that uniform, and then create out of that. Miles Morales is an incredible example of what you can do by kind of taking that mantle of Spider-Man, putting it in a different universe, and having fans flock to Miles.
yeah.
He's a huge influential modern character, who is Spider-Man, but he's not Peter Parker. And
Yeah.
those are the, like, that's kind of the difference. And I might have just totally that might have really gotten people upset. I'm not
I
sure
don't
if
know.
okay.
I
But,
enjoyed the explanation that you
okay.
provided, right? Because the whole Bucky to Cap thing, that actually makes sense to me, right? And like, a lot of people push back against Miles Morales, saying that he was replacing Peter Parker, where technically he wasn't replacing Peter Parker, right? He was
Mhm,
from another universe, right?
mhm,
And he is of himself a spider character that is incredibly dope. Like, a lot of people that spoke out against Miles Morales never read Miles Morales. If you
mhm,
read it, it's actually really good. And my son, who is biracial, has a wonderful collection of Miles Morales sitting over here to the left, because I think that his biracial nature will potentially resonate with my boy when he recognizes that he's actually biracial. Like, he's only 7, so he doesn't fully appreciate that yet, but the time is coming, and I think that the Miles character may actually resonate with him. Now, one of the things I
Absolutely.
will say to you is I personally think that you have a sensible and thought out logic to the way that you feel the way that you do. Do you think that that your point of view, your perspective, is typical for those that push back against the woke mindset, or are you atypical for those that push back? Because again, I haven't spoken to a ton of people about this. A lot of people will put their hand up and have the conversation. So I have to ask you, as someone that creates content that speaks to some of this, what is your thought?
That man, that's such a great question, and just an excellent representation of why I'm so thankful to be talking with you right now, man. Because that, like, the those kind of questions are like what really generate this type of, like, brotherhood and sisterhood through this comic book family. So I really appreciate the conversation. I get excited when, like, you have good questions like that. Um, so I do think it's a bit atypical. At first, I don't think it was. At first, I think people had these questions and it was fine, and they were kind of wondering with the idea. But now the anti woke mob has also become an echo chamber in itself.
Mm,
So now we're getting this whole other fringe, minority people who are very loud, and they're saying the typical go woke, go broke thing. But tell me your experiences. Where have you seen,
mm,
storylines go woke and go broke? And then they go, well, it's because of Kelly Sue DeConnick. and they pulled a clip from Kelly Sue DeConnick saying this one thing, and you go,
Is it the
okay,
X-Men versus X something? Was that her?
she did Aquaman for a little while.
Oh,
She
co-
was the one.
completely different person then.
Okay, all right. There are plenty of creators that people will pull from and go, you know, they'll say, sorry, I was reading someone in the chat that I might
Don't read the chat. Focus on me.
I'm like, man, everyone's got some really good comments here. So yeah, essentially, I think that there are a lot of people that are being very loud and angry and outraged and blah blah, which is fine because they're also vocalizing their concerns. But when it's said in a way that is not conversational, when people don't want to have these types of conversations, that's where I go, man, am I like milk toast here, or
Yeah.
or am I wrong? Am I middle of the road? Because I feel like when I try and have these conversations with people, I feel like I'm coming at it from a logical stance and just saying, hey, this is just my opinion. And yet I get tons of backlash and outrage. And I'm like, man, so I can't find either one. I'm not woke enough or I'm too it's like I can't find a middle ground. So it's very interesting.
I think the extremes in my mind are always rough, and it doesn't matter what the extremes are, right?
Mhm,
The extremes are always very loud, very
mhm.
opinionated, and sometimes the most uninformed, right? And I
Yeah,
say that because oftentimes they read a headline, and the headline becomes the entire story.
yeah,
When the headline is being written by a journalist to capture your attention, because that's what we do, right? That's what I was trained as a journalist to do, is to capture somebody's attention in order to tell them a story, right? People could have looked at the thumbnail for this video and assumed that we were going to go in one direction when we, I think, are kind of sort of going right down the middle of
yeah.
exploring what this stuff means. The goal is to capture the attention and then deliver something. Would you agree, though, that potentially people are not completely as informed as they should be, yet tend to be very vocal about their thoughts on both sides of the argument?
Oh, absolutely. There's a sense of belonging, I think, that people tend to feel when they are on one side of the aisle or the other. They
Mm,
feel that they're heard, they feel
mm,
understood, they feel connected, because everyone is echoing that same, sentiment, and they're all talking about the same thing, and they're all just kind of miring in this like thing that is like, yeah, I hate that too. Well, I hate that too, and then it just becomes this big circle like I said, a big echo chamber, and like you said, you get that on both sides, and then that doesn't open itself up for conversation because then once they've closed themselves off to let's just listen to ourselves, and someone comes in and go, hey, I actually have an opinion on that, on both sides, they'll go, nope, we don't want to hear it. We've already got our little thing going on here. We feel good here, we feel safe. We're not going to kind of open this up for discussion anymore, and that's that's dangerous. I remember one of
agreed.
my good yeah one of my good friends, he's an award-winning comic book writer and editor, just came out with a great graphic novel this year, published by Mad Cave. And he and I were having a conversation, and I told him, I said, "Man, I just read this comic, and I am so mad, and blah blah." And I'm telling him how they deliberately did all this, and he comes back at me and he goes, "Hey, I understand where you're coming from. What if you looked at it kind of like this?"
Mm,
And
mm.
totally diffused my anger and my frustration. And he goes, "What if that writer doesn't really know anything other than this?
Yep.
This is what he sees on the news. This is what he sees in the media, and so he's going to portray you as that type of person, unconsciously. That's
Yep.
going to be his thing in the comic." And I had to look at it, and I was like, dang it.
Yeah.
You're right, man. You're right. And it totally diffused the situation, the conversation. And it made me realize, a lot of this stuff maybe isn't intentional or deliberate, but some of it is just people's own biases,
Yep.
or maybe I hate to say it, but negligence or incompetence at
Or
some
lazy or they're just
Yes,
super
yeah,
lazy. But
super
the
lazy,
thing
Jim.
is, I think that what you just demonstrated there is an open mindset, a willingness to
Mhm,
hear a different point of view and to believe that you might actually be wrong, or somebody else also has a valid point, just as valid as your own, right? But if you're
mhm,
not receptive to that, but to the point there are many out there that believe that this woke mindset is a purposeful, potentially malicious thing that is being done by like DC Comics, for example,
mhm.
right? To your last point, is your belief that what is happening a deliberate act to destroy DC Comics? Because that's essentially what people are saying. Like they are doing this on purpose in order to destroy DC Comics. Do you subscribe to that thinking? And if not, then what is your thinking around what is happening specifically at DC?
Yeah, I think there are 2 answers to this. The first one is, and I think you and I briefly spoke about this the other day, but there's no way that DC is purposefully trying to implode in on itself because, like,
What company does that?
yeah, like, to be fair, like, these guys want money too, you know what I mean? These guys want careers too. They want a nice house, a nice car, they want support for their family. They gotta get.
Jim Lee's got a lot of kids, brother. Could you imagine Jim Lee being sitting at the table on Monday?
Yeah,
Gentlemen,
right.
we are about to tank this company. Let's take it down. I don't like
He's like, "We're
food. I don't
done."
like nice stuff. We're going to
No.
take it down and ride it
Yeah.
to the bottom. Who does that? But that's what people believe, right? So,
Mhm.
but continue with your thought. I had to talk about Jim Lee. I try to mention him whenever I can, Jim Lee.
Absolutely, yeah, and yeah, it is funny because people would say, "Oh, well, Dan Didio tried to do that, and that's why they got rid of him," or whatever, and a whole nother conversation. But the second part to what I was going to say is essentially the first part being, no, I don't think they're intentionally trying to take down DC Comics because everyone wants to profit off of their work. Second being though, there are times where I can honestly say that I have felt where I've read something. Whew, man, that felt intentional.
Mm.
And that is my own, that is some my own opinion that I've read in a book where I've got where I've said, that didn't feel right, or that read weird, or that character seemed off. And um obviously I've looked into it more because if I just read it at face value, of course I'm gonna go, oh well, this was intentional. But like I said, after having conversations with friends, you kind of open your mindset up. But there are some creators who tend to be a bit divisive, a bit too on the nose with their writing,
Yep.
and that I think tends to be intentional.
Mm.
So writers, I think, tend to do that. Editorial, uh, corporate, they need that money coming in, you know what I mean? So, I think that's where the juxtaposition comes from, and that's kind of why I answered in 2 parts, if that.
No, it's a good
Yeah.
question. And someone just asked a question here a second ago, and the question was, who are they writing these comics for? So to that point,
Mm,
do you think that what they are attempting to do, and I think Jim Lee spoke about like this whole diversity angle before, and it almost seems like what they want to do is to try to create some characters for specific groups of people out there with the hope that these characters will resonate with those groups of people. Is that okay? Is it okay that they create these characters specifically for a small group of people versus the masses? Like your Batman, your Superman, your Spider-Man, they may be the masses, but there could be this unique character where they're like, you know what, this is an underrepresented group of people. Let's create something for them. Is that wrong? Is that bad? What are your thoughts?
no, not at all, and this kind of, goes back to our original point of, is the idea of diversity and inclusion in comic books wrong? No, not at all. If people think that, then there's some stuff internally that you gotta deal with. So inherently, at its core, diversity and inclusion and writing these stories for these people who may not have that in mainstream comics or mainstream media, I don't think is a bad thing. When it becomes the sole purpose of a story, or when
Mm,
it becomes a sole purpose of a character, that's when it loses its creative integrity. It deconstructs the basic structural integrity of that character, or that character arc, by suddenly doing something that changes the entire like history of that character. And then it's also kind of mixed with that virtue signaling and weaponization of the fans' concerns that we had spoken about earlier. And um, I think all of that plays into it. But when because people will say, "Well, Max, you're represented in every book. You've got Superman, Wolverine, Batman. You're a white straight male. You've got every single book. Now it's time to get some representation. Now that you've had your time, it's time for the other representation for everyone else." And that sounds like a power dynamic. When it's like, well, it's not your turn anymore. It's our turn to have this comic book community, or this family. And that's not being inclusive, because if you are truly 100% inclusive and diverse of everyone, then that means diversity of thought and diversity of experiences and backgrounds. And you can get that from people who have white skin or who are straight. And so I think with more recent comic books, the main way that they want to try and push diversity is, let's make these legacy characters, these main characters, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, let's make them the diverse characters now, to kind of equalize that power balance.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's that simple. And I think, I guess if that makes
one of the things that you mentioned when we spoke on the phone, whatever we spoke, Instagram, we spoke on Instagram. Somebody asked what my preferred platform was. It's like Instagram, because I can have wonderful conversations. A shout out to Brandon for the super chat. I definitely appreciate that, brother. Was you spoke about earlier in this conversation, and that conversation was lazy writing might be the culprit, right? Lazy editors not necessarily paying attention to what writers are saying and what artists are actually drawing. So talk with me a little bit about potentially what publishers should be doing. And you've spoken about it already, but I want to kind of encapsulate it. If they shouldn't be doing gender swaps and other just, replacements, what should they be doing? Let's end this thing on a little bit of a positive note, if you will, with some positive feedback for those that may be listening, watching, etc.
Absolutely, man. The first thing I'll say is I'll mention a quote from Stan that I had written down here, and I was like, man, this just hits home. And I always love reading this quote because it just speaks to why I've always enjoyed comic books, and why I think this medium is one of the best storytelling mediums ever. But there's a great AMC interview that Stan does. If you're viewing this right now in chat, or if you guys view this later, definitely go check out the interview of Stan Lee discussing the creation of the X-Men. He's interviewed by AMC, and they talk about social issues, because a lot of people have equated X-Men with civil rights movement or whatnot. And Stan blatantly and outright says, social issues I try to get in the background or underlying the plot, but never to the point of letting it interfere with the story or hitting the reader over the head. And I think that's why X-Men were so beautiful, because you've got Nightcrawler, who has a Catholic faith base to him, and so maybe some people can relate to that, but it's not, Nightcrawler isn't only his faith. And then you've got Storm, who led the X-Men as a Black female character. Where is her solo book? Let's see a solo book of Storm, and let's put a kick-ass writing team and artist team on that, and let's have a Storm book, or an X-Men book where Storm leads the X-Men again. And Storm wasn't just her character wasn't just, oh, here's my skin color, that's it. And that's because there's no depth to that.
Yep.
Storm has this fear of being enclosed, because she rages the winds and the tides and the weather. And so she needs to be free. And there's this fear of being too conformed in a box and all this stuff. So there's so much more to her character than just, here's my
Her
race.
skin. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I guess to Stan Lee's quote of saying, we need to if politics are in a book, we can't be having that be the main factor. I think we need to start seeing characters come out like Midnighter, like Jon Stewart, Vixen, Yara Flor, who just had her series canceled by DC, Alan Scott, Green Lantern. We need to have their own monthly book with a, like I said, with a kick-ass writing team, a great artist, and we need their stories now.
Mm.
Right now, DC is doing variant covers for Black History Month. Come on, DC, you guys need. We don't need variant covers. We need storylines of Jon Stewart going through, because Jon Stewart is also a Marine. So that was why he was a huge influence on me as a Marine.
Yep.
And a lot of my other Marines love Jon Stewart because Semper Fi,
He was one of you guys. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And his character comes from honor, courage, and commitment, which are the 3 core values of the Marine Corps. So it wasn't, oh, I identify with him because of his skin color. I identified him with because his character is honor, courage, and commitment. And that's what he brought into the Green Lantern Corps. So let's see him take some of his tactics from the Marine Corps, implement that in the Green Lantern Corps. What happens in the galaxy as he's protecting sector 2814? How does that weigh on him as a character, as a leader of the Green Lanterns? So with those characters, I think we need to see more storylines, not just variant covers, not just one shots, not just, hey, we'll throw you this, we'll throw you that. I would love to see beautiful storylines told of all these characters.
Yep.
And then the second thing being, or I guess the third, I'm not sure which one I'm
It's
on.
third.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
well done.
Thank you.
I'm keeping track.
Okay. I appreciate it. Is new characters, and not, hey, let's get Wolverine number 4, or let's get another Green Lantern, or let's give a sibling to this character, or another Bat family member. I'm talking like wholly original. I think that would really give some agency to any type of person who feels like they are marginalized. If they came out with a character that had his or her own name, his or her own, maybe not necessarily universe, but kind of characteristics, plot line, and just created from new uniform, didn't have to conform to the Superman logo or the Spider-Man logo, his own thing. That would be cool. I mean, you look at Wolverine wasn't really technically a modern character, because when you think of his creation, I don't think he got his first solo series until the late 80s.
Yeah.
And so, Wolverine was a wholly new idea as part of the X-Men, and people were like, I'm on board with this thing.
You got it. You got it, Bob.
So I think, yeah, right. He's the best at what he does. And so I think that would be my final kind of like closing statements on this whole thing. Is I would love to see those implemented into DC now. Stan Lee's quote, these beautiful storylines told of legacy characters that are already there in the history, and new characters that have their own agency, that don't need the mantle of a different superhero.
Max, I want to thank you, brother, for agreeing to come on, and I think doing a fantastic job of helping us to understand the point of view, right? Because I think it is important, as I mentioned before, for us to be able to pause and to have these conversations in a civil manner. And as I look at the chat, the chat has also been very civil, so I definitely appreciate that. Shout out to the Blue Wrenches that are in there doing what they do, so I appreciate your service as well. But MVP, where can people get a hold of you? Because you have a YouTube channel, and that YouTube channel is full of, in my opinion, I think well thought out videos that are way more polished than your 6 months in the YouTube content creation sphere. So hats off to that. But where can people find you on the social media?
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. This YouTube thing has been so much fun, delving into one of my passions, my hobbies of comics. And it's been really cool to have this shift from, active service Marine Corps to now this. And so with that being said, you guys can find me. MVP Maxfield Von Priestley is my full name, and I mainly do comic books. Like I said, it's my passion, but I also talk about movies, pop culture, anything that's really going on within this industry of kind of nerddom that I think might be important or might need to be discussed. Because like what we just did, Reggie, having these conversations is super important. And so if I think it needs a video to kind of discuss that, I'll throw it up on the channel. So, but yeah, I can't thank you enough for having me on and just wanting to have this conversation because it can be so polarizing at times, and it really means a lot that you would take the time out of your day to bring me on. So I appreciate it.
Brother, I enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully the 170 or 80 people that were here enjoyed it as well.
Heck
So,
yeah.
again, MVP, thank you for coming on. If you guys enjoyed what you heard from Max, I definitely want to encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to his channel. I will reach out to you soon, brother.
Aw-
Oh, I cut him off. I got him at the very end. I try to pause, but I got him at the end. Again, these are important conversations for us to have, and I want to acknowledge the folks that are here in the live stream. I want to thank the Blue Wrenches. I want to thank Mark for giving me the confidence to be able to do this live stream and to have this conversation. He said to me, your channel is like Switzerland. I think you can talk about just about anything. And so it takes me time to wrap my mind around how to do it. But I want to thank you guys for giving me, right, a safe space to be able to explore some of these things, because these are not easy conversations to have, but I think that they are important conversations to have if we truly love comics the way that we say that we do, and we appreciate this community. We have to be able to talk about these things and walk away with an improved understanding. Thank you all for the super chats. We absolutely appreciate that. There was one other item I was going to get to, but we are not going to talk about it now. If you all need to reach out to me for whatever reason, feel free to do so on Instagram, which is my preferred platform, and you can find me at Regie Collects. And like I said, you can reach me there, and I'm always willing to have a conversation. With that, I will say good night to you all.